What is Rotten Tomatoes and how does it work? Rotten Tomatoes is essentially a review aggregation platform. Essentially, it's a central hub where critics and audiences go online and provide their own thoughts on movies and TV shows, as well as other insights. Rotten Tomatoes is then going to take that score that you give, that is going to grab everybody's score and give an aggregate based on what everybody has given the movie or TV show. So that way, when you and I want to go online and see how well a movie is doing or TV show or whether or not it's good, the score can help tell a lot of that. Also, the critics and audiences that make up these scores actually are not affiliated with Rotten Tomatoes in any way, meaning that Rotten Tomatoes doesn't hire them, and Rotten Tomatoes in and of itself actually doesn't review movies and TV shows. Critics and audiences do. People just like you and me, Rotten Tomatoes is just there to provide a platform to do so. Now let's kind of go into some questions as to how Rotten Tomatoes actually works and how you get around there. First, how do you navigate Rotten Tomatoes? Simply go to www.rottentomatoes.com. Once there, there's search boxes and tabs where you can look up and see different scores for different movies and TV shows, as well as look up news and other great sources of information. They even have a Rotten Tomatoes podcast talking about where to find scores. For example, say I want to look at the score for Venom Let There Be Carnage. I type into the search box, and when I go to the page, I see two different scores. I see one for critics and one for audiences. Well, what's the difference between the two? Essentially, one group is more vetted than the other. Can you take a guess at which group is more vetted? You guessed right, it's the critics. So critics are essentially industry professionals and other fans who are verified by Rotten Tomatoes as those who work for publications, newspapers, journalists, or even YouTube channels. When these critics review a movie on Rotten Tomatoes, they go ahead and they give their score, as well as provide proof that they actually went and watched the movie. And then once all the critics give their scores, Rotten Tomatoes aggregates all of them into one giant critic score. On the other side of that coin, audiences are average Joes and Janes just like you and I who love to go see movies and write some reviews about them. However, we do not work for journalists, publications, newspapers, or have YouTube channels. When audiences write a review for the movie, they don't have to provide proof that they watched it, but in order to get calculated into the audience score, you have to provide proof that you've seen the movie via Fandango, which is a movie ticket app. But that's outside the scope of this video. And essentially, by making us prove that we've seen the movie through Fandango, it's essentially validating the score so that we can prevent score fraud. Meaning that if you've got an agenda against a studio or a movie and you just want it to have a bad score, you can't just go on there and shit can the movie and give it a low score, or the opposite. You can't go on there and give it the highest score possible without even seeing it. This is how Rotten Tomatoes prevents false scores, making it very, very viable. Answering the second minor question, which is what does the percentage score for a movie actually mean? So if you look at our example of Venom Let There Be Carnage, the movie scores read like this. 59% of critics who went and saw Venom Let There Be Carnage liked it, and 85% of audiences who saw Venom Let There Be Carnage liked it. Now, this is a great example of the fact that critics and audiences have different scores because they have very different perspectives and hence have very different scores. If a score reaches below a 60%, the movie is considered rotten, and if the movie score is above that, it's considered fresh, to help discern the good from the bad. So now you know what makes up each of these scores. How do you write a review of your own? Now me, since I am not a critic on Rotten Tomatoes myself, I can't speak to the critic piece, but I can speak to the audience piece. All you have to do is simply create an account, type in the search box the movie that you want to write a review for, scroll down a little bit until you find the menu where you can click on the number of stars you'll give the movie, and also optionally write your review. I've done it for a number of movies, and it's not only a lot of fun, but it's also great practice for you to articulate why you loved or didn't like a movie very much. Plus it helps people out, which is great. Just know at the end of the day, false scores don't help anybody, including your fellow film fans. So say you're an average audience member just like me and you want to become a critic. How do you do that? So critics on Rotten Tomatoes have to fit a certain number of criteria, and they also have to apply to become a critic on Rotten Tomatoes. You can apply in 2 windows throughout the year. The first window starts from March 1st to March 31st and from September 1st through September 30th. In those 2 windows, you can fill out an application right on Rotten Tomatoes website. Plus they've got a nice handy dandy page where they outline all the criteria that you need to become and be considered for a critic. And the criterion changes depending on whether you are a YouTuber or an individual, you're from a publication, whether or not you're from a TV station. It all changes and it varies widely. Go ahead and visit this URL if you want to learn more, and I'll link it down in the description below. And for a bit of added fun, if you want to look up your favorite journalist or YouTuber, you can actually look up who all of the certified critics are. Again, just go onto the URL that I'll link in this video and you can take a look and search for just about anybody. When looking up each of these certified critics, if you see someone who's an individual, it means they're probably a YouTuber or they have some kind of individual outlet of their own, or you'll see the name of their publication, newspaper, or journal site next to their name, indicating that they work for a third-party company. For example, IGN would fall into that category. For example, I looked up Miranda Sanchez and I saw her name and it says approved for reviewing for IGN. What that means is if Miranda Sanchez were to go ahead and write a review on her own behalf, her score would go into the audience score. But if she was writing on behalf of IGN, it would go into the critic score. So my friends, I hope this helped clear up what exactly Rotten Tomatoes is and how to use it, as well as some other fun tools. Good luck on your Rotten Tomatoes journey. This has been the Bankrupt Hippo YouTube channel. I've been Bryce, and until next time, have a great day.